Let's begin our round preview. Thanks to Game Day Squad. Create, coach, and compete in fantasy footy. Eels vs Panthers. Thursday, 8 p.m, Bluebet Stadium. Madison is named as second row for his first game of the year, so Matt Doherty moves to the bench and Jack Murchie is out. Hooker, Brendan Hands has been named to make his NRL debut off the bench. Panthers team news. Scott Sorensen returns to the bench. Eisenhuth drops out. What do you got, Smithy?
Well, it's a big game for Ryan Madison, isn't it?
Oh, my
He
God.
took the he took the suspension
Over the fine.
instead of the fine, and he's missed the opening rounds of the season for his footy side.
Apparently they asked him to decide literally a
Costly.
few days after the grand final.
Really?
Yeah, so like
Who the NRL did?
so whoever it was, that
Yeah.
they said basically we need a decision because like Dylan Brown's come out and said they kind of rushed him into a decision,
Right.
and it was a few days after the grand final, and apparently Matto's just been like, oh mate, he'd already been sick of getting fined or something like that, and
Yep.
he just made a rash decision.
Yeah. And then asked for it afterwards, and the NRL said, no, you've made
Yeah,
your
and then
mind
said,
up.
look, yeah, can we do the suspension?
Yeah.
Sorry, the fine, and
Yeah.
I think the NRL said no.
Wow.
So yeah, unfortunate
Yeah.
for Matto, but how do you see this game panning out?
No, look, I think he'll be up for a big one. I think he would have been feeling pretty ordinary over the first 3 weeks, watching his team go out there and play and him not being there to help out. So he'll be in for a big game. I'm sure he'll play really well. He's a great player, Ryan Madison. They need a win.
Oh,
They just need to win.
however they get it.
However they get it, yeah. And look, that the frustrating thing for Eels fans and particularly for their players and coaches that they've been in all 3 matches to their eyeballs, up to their eyeballs. They were they took Storm to Golden Point. They were right there with the Sharkies, and then last week with Manly. Manly started really well, but then they come back with a flurry of tries, Parramatta, and I thought, well, this is going to be they'll win this.
Yeah.
And then they just fell to sleep. They just I don't know. It seems like they just clock off in parts of games when you just cannot afford to do that. And I remember a couple of quotes from Brad Arthur last year, the Parramatta coach, is that what he was always striving for his players to find was consistency within the 80 minutes. And that was their main issue, particularly in the start of the first half of last year. We all know, they came good at the back end and made a grand final, but they're just battling again. They're battling again, and I don't know. Are they still adjusting to the couple of new players, particularly Josh Hodgson playing at 9? Right, Reid Marnie was a big part of their team over the last 4 or 5 seasons. Are they still adjusting to having a new 9 there? I don't know. They've showed glimpses of really good footy, the footy that you expect Parramatta to go out and play, but they just haven't really been able to put together an 80-minute performance yet.
Yeah, Eels, I guess, it's so early in the season, so, take it with a grain of salt. It can turn around, all that kind of stuff. Maybe they go on a massive run later. The concerning thing for me, though, is that I would consider the Eels, like, they confirmed to us that they're potentially a powerhouse last year.
Yeah.
And you would hope they head into this year, lessons learnt, knowing who they are, their identity is strong and clear. And the first few rounds, I just think that they're still trying to find that. As you said, like getting used to certain things. And look, I understand, like new combinations take time. But, okay, for example, when the Penrith Panthers lost Appy, now, you're never going to be able to replace Appy. But everyone was extremely confident. What do they always say, especially when you were at the Storm?
Yeah.
Next man up. So they just slot straight in to the system and the concern I have with the Eels is like, we haven't really heard that rhetoric of like next man up. It's more like, oh, well, we need to readjust this and that. And so that's just the worrying sign I have with the Eels.
Yeah. But then you look at their lineup though, and they're underperforming massively, massively. Like Clint Gutherson, Sivo, Will Penasini, Wanga Blake, Bailey Simonson, Dylan Brown, Mitch Moses. That's your back line. Like they are seasoned players, and I know there's a couple of young fellas in there, but they've played more than enough games to get their job done. Then you go to the front row of Campbell Gillard and Junior Bolo, Josh Hodgson coming off an ACL injury, of course, but he was at a time one of the better players, not just in the NRL, in the world.
Yeah.
Playing at number 9. Yeah, they've got a team that underperforming massively, and now the challenge gets even greater. They take on Penrith, who have had a week off. They will be fresh. they'll be keen to put 2 points on their premiership table or after a bit of a shaky start in round one against the Broncos. The Broncos played extremely well, but they got things back on track against the Bunnies.
Well, I
Had
think,
last week off, and now they'll be looking to really sort of get their season underway, I reckon, this week.
well, I think it's like a really good example of like the difference of where the clubs are at. When the Panthers got ambushed, they didn't panic, or I'm not saying the Eels have panicked, but what did they do? They just went, you know what, guys, we lost, but we kept them under, I think it was like 13 points or whatever.
Yep.
They just went back to their old defensive, simple game plan the next week, got the job done. And whereas the Eels, when you look at like, okay, that first game, it was a low scoring game, but every game outside of that has been like 30 plus points.
Well, they're conceding on average like 26 points.
Wow.
And then add that on to averaging 14 errors. So, 1 + 1 = 2.
Equals, you're 100% right.
All it equals, it's going to be hard to win footy games.
Yeah.
When you're conceding that many points and you're turning the ball over as much as they are, like 14 errors a game, that's a high number. When you're doing that, what you're doing is you're making it hard for yourself to win.
Yeah.
And like I said, they've been in the 3 matches that they've played. They've had opportunities to win, but those stats there, they're key stats to going in and getting the 2 points.
Well, you look at like, imagine if you could bring that 26 points down to 12, and then you could bring that error count down to 6. Imagine this; they'd be blowing teams off the park.
Half it.
Just half everything. They'd be blowing teams, like, because their attack is clearly there. Like, points are not an issue.
Yeah.
So hopefully they can. I think I'd still back them in to make the 8 for sure.
Yep.
But they've got to definitely sort it out. But just quickly on the Panthers, interesting game for the Panthers because they could play on the emotion of we got beaten by the Broncos, we got beaten on St. Helens. Let's go back to the basics. How do you think they're going to come out against the Eels? Are they going to be a really simple game plan again, do you think? Or
For them, I just think take the emotion out of it. Take the emotion out of it. You've had a week off. I'm sure they would have taken their opportunity to freshen up a little bit and just get their energy levels right for this game. It's a big game. It's grand final replay, as a lot of people like to coin it. But they go to CommBank Stadium. There'll be a big crowd there Thursday night. Rival Western Sydney type of stuff. Take the emotion out. Just go there and play their style of footy. Get through their sets as you mentioned, Kempy. Go back to your boring old defensive structures that it's really hard to break their line. Make yourself really hard to score against. They'll get enough points to win it if they defend their try line really well.
Well, I mean, I think we discussed it last week, but as it stands, Penrith Panthers is still the best defensive side in the comp.
Yeah, and they're sitting 5th.
And so it just shows you that that's why they're the best. So it's a cliche, and I'm sure fans are sick of hearing it.
Yeah,
but
well, across sitting 5th, they've only played two games. But if you have best defensive stats across an entire season of 27 weeks, which it is this year, they'll be sitting top of the ladder.
I mean, you can build everything off that. So hopefully the Eels can take a leaf out of that, and because their attack's incredible. So great clash. I cannot wait. I think it's going to be phenomenal. Now we've got Storm v the Tigers. Smithy, look, please speak to me. What is happening at the Storm?
Well, I want to hear your thoughts first.
Okay.
Break it down for me.
Break it down. Well, look, from outside looking in, I know a lot of people will try and point to all of the outs the Storm have out. And look, I'm there with you. But the outs don't not drop the ball for you. They don't not miss tackles. Now, on the weekend, they actually were pretty good with the missed tackles. But before round 1 and 2, they'd missed the most tackles of any team in the comp, which is, I know it's a cliche that gets tossed around all the time, but that truly is unstorm-like. If there is one thing that you guys could do, it was defend, especially one-on-one.
Yep.
And so I don't know whether it's inexperience. I don't know whether it's fatigue. I don't know whether it's, they've got Christian Welsh, who's a senior player in the forward pack now. Outside of that, maybe there's not as many people to turn to as they used to. Whereas when things got tough yesteryear, Bromwich, Kaufusi, well, both the Bromwiches, they could just go, you know what, boys, can you lead the ship or lead the charge and we'll follow you. But unfortunately, if you keep leaking all those points and making all those errors, you're never going to be able to build any momentum.
Yeah. Well, if you heard Craig Bellamy's comments after the Titans match, they were pretty damning. And he give these players a real whack. He spoke about care factor. And he just doesn't know whether he's players care enough.
Yeah, wow.
And the commitment to the team and to the jersey and to the game that they're playing. That, to me, that's the biggest whack you can get from anyone.
Yeah.
Is when the coach comes out and questions your care for your team and the jersey that you're wearing.
Such a proud jersey too.
Well, it is. Yeah, of course it is. And you can talk about the injuries and you can talk about the amount of young players that are playing there at the moment. But you are right. There's an expectation for those players to go out and make tackles and hold on to the football and make good decisions when they have the football in hand. The game on the weekend against the Titans, like that's another game of football where the Storm, they were leading by 12 points just before halftime. They had an opportunity to go into halftime at 12 points up and take a really commanding position into the second half. But they continued to try and push the envelope a little bit with their football. And they were looking for opportunities to make line breaks. They were looking for opportunities to score points. And by doing so, they were bringing sort of low percentage plays into their game. A couple of errors later, the Titans, capitalise on, some loose passes, some loose hands, and they score points. They go into halftime down by 6. Only 5 or 6 minutes after halftime, the Storm find themselves down by 6. And it's just through that football where, they didn't have to play. And I think there were some moments throughout that, particularly, the second 40 and the last 5 minutes. So the last 45 minutes of the match, that's where I think Craig Bellamy made his comments from, was that he just didn't see enough care from his troops, from his players. And I think if you look over that game, mate, there was probably a few of those errors come from some of the senior players as well in that footy team. So, I'm sure he would have put them to task in the review of that match. Would have happened quickly. It's a short turnaround for them. And they'd be back to business this week.
Oh, I hope so. Now, quickly with the Tigers. Adam Dewey has been moved to fullback, Staines to the wing. Wakeham will start at 5'8". Means Nofaluma drops out. The Tigers, Api Coruscant is such a good example of, there were periods where Api Coruscant was looking like he was playing poorly, but it was because, no one was going with him.
Yeah, well, and in the end, it was just he was trying to do everything. Yeah. Which is not our game. It's just not our game. And Api's he's a wonderful player, has been for a long time, but he needs some help.
Needs some help massively.
He's making the tackles. He's trying to make dummy half runs. He's trying to set up players on the outside.
Something.
He's trying to do everything. But we all know that it's a team game. It's a team sport. Just get your individual roles done. Okay? Put some trust in your teammate. Get out there and get your job done. Your teammate will get his done. And when they do that, players like Api and Adam Dewey, the ones with that special gift, that special talent, they'll come up with the big plays.
Yeah.
I don't mind that. I don't mind the move, actually, Adam Dewey going to fullback.
Well, it's an interesting one, though, because, so I think Dane Laurie's on the bench. And so you've had a whole preseason, I assume, with Laurie. There was some conjecture around Staines getting the spot, but Laurie ended up getting the spot. You move Dewey to the back. The thing is, you got to stick with it now, though. Yeah. You can't just go, boom, 1 week, and then he comes back. You got to stick with it.
Well, that's the issue, particularly with your spine players. If you keep chopping and changing, in for 1 week, out for another, in for 2 weeks, it becomes so messy. And every player can't play a same style. So then when you're chopping and changing, particularly with your fullbacks and your halves and whatnot, the style of footy changes.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, week to week, the other players around him just going, right, well, what game plan we got this week?
Yeah.
What style we playing this week? Okay, we're changing them. Then you just start getting confused, and it's not a great situation to be in.
Now, we're going to head to a break, and after the break, we're going to preview the massive clash of Dolphins versus the Broncos. Let's go. Dolphins versus Broncos, Suncorp Stadium, 8 p.m. What do you got on Fridays? We got Kafusi obviously out due to suspension. Wallace returns to the bench, and Kurt Donahue drops out. No changes to the Broncos team that defeated Dragons last week. How do you see this match playing out, Smithy?
Oh, it's the game of the season, I reckon, for many reasons. But yeah, just the rivalry. First time we get to see the Dolphins playing against the Broncos, the crosstown rivals. Plenty of storylines involved. It's, new team against established team. Wayne Bennett versus Kevin Walters. the former captain-coach combo of the Broncs. I think that I'm so excited for this. Sold out. It's just, there's no better feeling than running out in front of a huge crowd at Suncorp Stadium. Just wondering how much of an impact Felice Kafusi's suspension will have on the Dolphins. He's been so integral to the start of their season, the 3 wins. And, he's had good impact with the football, with his carries and his combinations out on that edge. But his defence for mine, and, we've just mentioned defence before about how important it is. His defensive efforts and some of the plays that he's come up with in the 3 games that have changed the game for the Dolphins when they haven't particularly sort of had momentum or had control of the game. He's come up with some big plays where he's got turnovers out of the opposition ball carriers and given the Dolphins opportunities with the ball. So interested to see how much of an impact his absence will have on the team. Speaking with Jesse Bromwich earlier, the captain, he seemed cool as a cucumber. He seemed relaxed.
Yeah.
He didn't seem like a person that was, worried about the occasion or the opposition or a little bit apprehensive about, what the result's going to be. He seemed pretty relaxed and ready to go for this one. He just mentioned, the boys are good. Felice is out and that's out of our control. We're just going to control what we control. So, that's for a lot of, Dolphins fans out there, that would be reassuring to hear, his positivity around that. But the Broncos, you cannot ignore the start that they've had and the fashion that in which they've gone out and played in the first 3 games. Really tough win first up at one of the hardest places to win a footy game, and that's down in Penrith against the reigning premiers. And then just 2 really impressive wins afterwards against the Cowboys, of course, and then the Dragons. Took them a little bit to get going against the Dragons. And I'll get you to touch on your thoughts on the way they went about that game. But once they clicked into gear, they looked really, really good.
Yeah, you're right. Took a while to go, the Broncos last week, and I hope the players, I know Kevy wouldn't, I hope the players aren't getting caught up in that score, going off 40-18, how good are we? We've just touched the Dragons up, because you didn't really, in reality, it doesn't reflect a dominant 80-minute display. The Dragons probably had the upper hand for at least 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was all due to the fact that the Broncos just wouldn't build any pressure. And it's all well and good having some of the most explosive forward pack in the comp, or at least close to, and some of the best outside backs in the comp, or close to. But unless you build pressure, and you're never going to win the big matches.
Yeah, and going off the first 3 rounds, we're not going to know how the Dolphins play until we see them run out on Friday night and the game unfolds. But going off their first 3 rounds, one of their strong points is they've given the opposition nothing. Their completion rates are high. I think they've been completing up around the 80% and that's typical of a Wayne Bennett coached team. It's going to be a great game. I reckon this will be really tight deep into the second half. Maybe whoever's controlling the ball more, they may just take it out.
Well, both teams last 10 minutes of the weekend.
Yep.
Scored a bunch of points.
Took them all the way to the end.
Yep. Now, on to the Cowboys v. the Titans. Griffin Neame replaces Ruben Cotter, who's out with a knee injury. And no changes to the team that beat the Storm last week, the Titans. How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, well, I think the Titans will be extremely happy with their victory over the Storm on the weekend. The result was great. Not sure if they'd be entirely happy with the points conceded on the way to a victory. They conceded 32 points or something like that. Pretty close. It was about 30 points. Cowboys been probably one of the more disappointing teams of the opening rounds. I've had these guys as premiers in 2023. Not saying they can't do it. Again, early days, but a lot of their players out of last year that performed really well, they've been very quiet to start the year. Been very quiet. And a huge out from Ruben Cotter, who gets through a mountain of work.
And Scotty Drinkwater as well.
In the middle, Scotty Drinkwater. Griffin Neame comes back. Great to see Griffin back. He did his ACL last year, missed nearly the whole season. So great to see him back. No changes for the Titans. Wonder what happened with Foz.
That was interesting.
Yeah, that was strange because he got back on the field.
Yeah, and Coach Holbrook basically said because it was hot, he was going to bring him off and then bring him back
He
on.
got the old fella's card.
Apparently, I'm not
Got a
sure.
rest.
But I'm just, maybe that was the reason. We can only believe what he says. But Kieran Foran, I personally I wouldn't take him off the field.
Yeah, unless there was some sort of issue he had physically at that point in time. Like as you said, we don't know. But it was a strange one to take your half off, particularly your leader.
Yeah, mate, he's a marquee signing.
Yeah.
In such a big clash too. You're not playing, obviously every clash is big, but you're playing the Storm. You want your most experienced blokes on the field.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as possible.
Yeah. I think Todd Payten would have put a huge challenge on this Cowboys team to get out there and play a style of footy they want to play at home because they would have been extremely disappointed with that result last week.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Cowboys, look, if they go down to the Titans at home, it starts to become really concerning because, as we've both said, I see them as a premiership threat this year.
Yeah.
And the Warriors just completely enthused and outplayed them last week. The Titans, look, they'll be super confident beating the Storm. Just got to sort the defence out. I speak about it all the time. I'm sure the community's getting sick of me speaking about it. The positive is that, even with Foran off the field, Campbell came on, did a job. Tanner Boyd seems to be growing each week.
Yep.
AJ Brimson, absolutely fantastic. Moe Fotuaika was really good last week, which is good signs for them because, so much focus on Tino, but Moe Fotuaika, he's played Origin and played well in one of the games that he did play.
Yep.
So I'm really keen to see how he continues to develop because I feel like last year he went a bit quiet. I hope he continues back on the path that he seems to be on this year.
Yep. And mate, they got an exciting roster as well, Titans. So if they go up there and they have that same enthusiasm that they played with last week, when they get opportunities, look at their first try. They played from deep inside their own half, scored nearly a length of the field try. They can do it against anyone. So if they take that same enthusiasm and that same confidence up to the Cowboys, this will be a great game.
Welcome back to the Captain's Run. Let's get into Rabbitohs Seagulls Saturday, 7:35 at Accor Stadium. Totola, knee. Shakwa, Mitchell, ankle. Hame Saleh, concussion. They're all out. Daniel Saluka for feeder starts at prop. Jacob Host starts second row. And Blake Taff is back on the bench. Seagulls, no changes. What do you reckon about this game, Smithy?
I've been really impressed with the Seagulls. I really have. They're just, the way they come out and started the game last week against Parramatta. They're undefeated, of course. They've had a bye in there also. But they look good. They look good. And the inclusion of Schuster playing in number 6, I think he could probably, he's still got a little bit of work to do with his fitness, but he failed to finish the game the other night, didn't he? He came off with calf cramps, I think, towards the end. It was a pretty hectic sort of a game and very hot at kickoff. They kicked off at 8 o'clock and it was 30 degrees still. So they look really, really sharp with the footy in particular. The game sort of got away from them a little bit, and it's an early trend in the NRL I've seen across the first couple of weeks is that teams have been getting away to good starts, but then all of a sudden they clock off for a little bit, and then opposition find the scoreboard a couple of times, and then all of a sudden it's back to square, and then it's almost like a shootout of who can score the most points.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, hey, listen, we've kept you to not much early, and we'll keep you there.
Yeah.
We're happy to win the game from this point. We don't need to score more, but we'll just stop you from scoring. That's the only thing that I feel that Manly, if they're to address something leading into this game, would be that, stick to your good starts. Obviously, that's the goal. You want to go out and have a good start. If you can grab some early points, that's great. And then just build your game from there. Don't try to chase more points or whatever. Just start to focus probably a little bit on your defence and minimising the opposition. Rabbitohs, though, they're always a threat. No matter who's playing out, who they've got in or who they got out, it doesn't really matter. They're always a threat. They've got classy players, And the only thing I'd say about the Rabbits, right, is like when they've got such quality players like Latrell Mitchell and Cody Walker, I'd love to see those two players in particular, Kempy, try to have a bit more input across the 80 minutes. They seem to drift in and out of the game at times. When you see them when they're on and, they're touching the ball every set and they're having a big influence on the way their team's playing, like that's when South are on. and that's when they play their best footy. But the other night, though, against the Roosters, and I don't know whether it's that rivalry thing and, there's a bit of emotion flying around the game and blah, blah, blah. They just seem to, I don't know, they just seem to drop out of the game at times, which they just can't afford. They're two of the best players in the competition. They need to be, having their hands on the footy regularly.
Yeah, because, they really can completely swing games, absolutely swing games. With the Seagulls, in regards to that little, phase out or whatever, I agree with you, mate. I think it's not concerning at all for the Seagulls, but it is a part of their game where, what separates great teams essentially from any era, and you always attribute to them, is ruthlessness. Like, how ruthless are you? Like, do you go play 20 minutes of good footy, then go, all right, boys, let's keep throwing the ball around? Or do you have a set of principles and systems that, regardless of the score, you stick to? You look at Penrith, that's what they did. You look at the Storm for so long, that's what they do. And I think, like, Manly's in a really good position where they can be that too. They've just got to find a way to be ruthless for 80 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, mate, totally agree. And again, they've certainly got the team to do that. They just got to find that balance of playing that footy where it's up tempo and going after the opposition, trying to score some points, and then, hey, righto, let's just drop it back a couple of gears, and let's just start to take control of this match through our defence. And that comes from the leaders, and the communication of the other players. I'm sure they're practicing a fair bit of their defensive stuff at training, particularly with Anthony Seibold in charge. I think he'd be right across that. But yeah, it's about having the ability to adapt in the middle of matches to say, righto, this is the style of footy we need to play now. Let's do this for the next little phase of play. And then when we need to ramp up a little bit and go after the game again, let's do that.
Yeah. No, totally agree. Going to be a cracking match now onto the Warriors versus the Doggies Sunday, 2 p.m. at Mount Smart Stadium. Charles Nickel-Klokstad returns at fullback. Jackson Ford returns second row. Egan is out with a concussion. Freddie Lussick named it hooker. Doggies, no changes to the team to beat the Tigers last week. How do you see this playing out?
I like this matchup.
Yeah,
I really do. Both teams are, they're playing some pretty good footy at the moment, and they're two clubs that haven't featured in the finals for a few seasons, and they're both sitting up in the top 8. So I really like the matchup. I like the Warriors at home. In fact, I think they're even money in the betting, but I'm leaning slightly towards the Warriors being back at Mount Smart Stadium. I think it's going to be a big crowd. Hopefully there's some good weather over there Sunday arvo. I like the Warriors. I was really impressed with their win away from home, particularly in Townsville. Going up there, I don't think too many people give them a chance of playing, particularly with the conditions and whatnot going up there. But I like them.
Well, the Warriors season, when you look at the only loss they had was against a Roosters at Roosters home.
Yeah, and just.
It
was 8 points.
If anything, Roosters bombed some chances, but there was a period at the end of the game where Warriors had wrestled momentum back and they bombed like 2 or 3 chances.
Yeah.
So it's a great start to the year. I'm going to go Doggies only because, I don't know, I think there might be some energy around that win last week. Yes, the Tigers came back in, but there's some energy around the club at the moment that I'm really liking. I love Burton back to running first and then ball playing second.
Yep.
On the weekend, he was constantly threatening with the ball, looked like he was back to his best. You got Reid Marnie an extra week to work with Burton and Flanagan. It's going to be I think it's going to be a tight clash. I can obviously see either side winning, but I'm just going to go Doggies. I don't know. For some reason, there's something about that side that I like.
With Matt Burton, and you talk about his ability to run the footy, and that should be his go-to. That's his first instinct. Do you reckon 6 is still his position?
Well, some people have tossed up that he's a centre.
Yeah.
But I think 6 is still his position. He just needs a 7 that can take care completely of the organisation of the game. And Flanagan has stepped up the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
Because apparently Carl Olowapu, I think his name is, young gun that was at the Broncos, now he's at the Bulldogs, been killing it in reserve grade. And I think he was 18th or 19th man last week.
Yep.
So I think there's a little bit of a message sent to Flano. It's now or never for you.
Okay.
And I think Flano's been decent the last 2 weeks. I really do.
Yeah.
So it is going to be interesting to see. So Birdo's just always going to think run first, in my opinion. Similar to Jackie Whiten. Just run first. Everything else will take care of itself.
Yep.
With the Warriors, I think Chance at the back is going to be really good for him, especially in defence. Even though Tuapiki was really good on debut, he's going to be fantastic. But Montoya, mate, I love watching him play.
Yeah.
Far out, hasn't he gone from strength to strength? Another interesting bit about this game as well is Penrith assistant coach versus Penrith assistant coach. Serraldo versus Webster.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there'll be a lot of little mind games going on there.
Wow. Good. No, I agree with you with Montoya. He's such an athlete.
He's made of granite.
Such an athlete.
Every time he runs the ball, it looks like it hurts the defenders to tackle him. He's so big and strong.
Yeah. Imagine being that powerful.
Oh, so big.
And
What is
fast.
it? 6'3"? Mate, seriously.
What a weapon.
What a weapon. Knights versus Raiders, Sunday, 4 p.m, McDonald Jones Stadium. Saifidi has been named after suffering a shoulder injury last week. Jaden Brayley returns at hooker. Dominic Young is out, replaced on the wing by Greg Marju. Tyson Frizzell has been named in the reserves and could return from an ankle injury, while Kurt Mann returns at lock. Papali'i returns from a calf injury. First game of the year. Emra Gula moves to the bench. Trey Mooney is out. Zach Wolford replaces Danny Levi at hooker. How do you see this game playing out, mate?
Yeah, well, it's great to see some big names returning for the Newcastle Knights. They've had a plethora of players out to start the season. It's been a difficult start for the team and coach Adam O'Brien. And they're taking on a Raiders side they've been playing some pretty tough footy, as I think everyone's used to seeing them play at the moment. Josh Papali'i, big in for the Raiders, the big man playing in the middle. First game of the year for him.
Oh, actually, I want to ask you something about the Knights.
Yeah.
Because on my podcast on Monday, I basically said that although they were missing all those players, I thought that it was a very disappointing loss against the Dolphins because my feelings were the Dolphins, a lot of the players, although they are first graders this year and they've proven it, last year were considered basically reserve graders, and some of them are struggling to find a club. And I thought on paper that although, the Dolphins forward pack was a little bit better, that the Knights backline was better than the Dolphins one. So on paper it was not a directly even, but a fairly even clash. And I thought 36 points leaking was quite disappointing. Yep. Got quite a lot of pushback from Knights fans saying that's super unfair.
Really?
It wasn't disappointing. You're being too harsh on the boys. What do you reckon, Smithy?
Oh, I think when you can see that many points, I think it'd be disappointing. We'll put it this way. I don't think the players nor the coach Adam O'Brien would have been happy with that performance. I don't think they would have gone into the sheds after the game and thought, oh, hey, boys, you know what? That was a great effort. I think that they would have finished that game thinking we could have won it. And we probably should have won it. There was chances there to do it. Of course, it's going to be a little bit harder with, some inexperienced players and some young guys playing in some of those positions for the team that have to come up with some crucial plays or decisions throughout the match. But conceding that many points, I think if you're playing first grade, you should be able to defend your try line a little bit better than that. So it's a big score line, it's a large amount of points to concede. And I'm sure, knowing Adam O'Brien quite well and the type of coach he is, he would have. There would have been areas of the game that he would have been happy with. There's no doubt about that, mate. There's no doubt about that. But I think there would have been some points and some vision shown to that footy side to say, hey, listen, look where we are. Look at the stage of this game. Look at the opportunities. We've let this one slip. We need to be better. And there's no doubt they can be better. I think off the back of the Raiders' pretty gutsy effort on the weekend at home against the Sharkies, I think they can win this one. I think they can win 2 in a row.
Yeah, the Raiders, for me, the confidence that they can build from that win. Sometimes when you're having all these, Raiders seem to find themselves in this year after year where they have these 2-point wins or 1-point win. It's almost like they love the battle. They make it hard for themselves.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. Like it's, people talk about, oh, that was an ugly win. Yeah, like if you haven't played your best, and you probably look at it and go, yeah, it was ugly, but it's just the way Canberra play.
Yeah,
they drag you into this sort of like dogfight, bit of arm wrestle style of footy. That really it upsets a lot of opposition teams, and they don't overly feel comfortable playing that style of footy, and that's how Canberra get you, and they pick up their wins. I think they'll do the same to Newcastle, and as I said, a lot of big names returning, which is great. I think it may be another week off before we see them start to return to their style of footy, their best style of footy. Papali, as I mentioned, big in. I like Zach Wolford. I really do. He replaces Denny Levi. Of course, Denny Levi picked up a broken jaw. I like Zach Wolford as a dummy half. He's not the biggest guy getting around, but he's a really strong defender.
Yeah.
Any opportunities he gets at dummy half when he's got the footy in hand, he will capitalise. He will take you on. He's just a style of player that he attacks both with ball in hand and when he's defending.
Yep. He's going to be. I think it'll be first game this year as well. So good opportunity for him to cement that spot. Now Dragons v Sharkies, the clash,
the derby.
Tony Couchman returns after suffering a head knock in round 2, so Michael Molo is out. And Nico Hines has been named for first game of the year.
Reigning Dally M medalist.
Braden Trindle moves to the bench.
Reigning Dally M medalist.
Wow.
Mayor of the Shire.
Oh, wow.
What else?
Mayor of our hearts.
Everything.
Everything, seriously. Mayor of hair products.
All of it. He's a great man, Nico. We love him. He's coming back from quite a serious calf injury. We spoke to him, leading into round 1?
Yeah.
He didn't let on, did he?
We were kind of like, usually when
he led us down a path.
Yeah. He was like, oh, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Whereas, when you're coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's taken him a month.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So I'm a little bit hesitant to see or trying to back the Sharks here, Kempy.
Oh, wow, you're going Dragons.
Yeah, well, calf injuries, I know they wouldn't send him back early.
Confidence though.
But just confidence, and he's always good when he's running the football, Nico.
Yeah.
I might back the Dragons.
Oh, well, I'm going Sharkies. That was our round preview.